evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of the city of University Place, and I'm calling the August 7th, 2023 University Place City Council meeting to order. And we can start with our roll call.
Councilmember Kills excused. Councilmember Wood.
Present.
Councilmember Pekleski.
I'm here.
Councilmember Belisi. Here. Councilmember Fleming's excused. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Present.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, present. And with that, we can move on with the help of Councilmember Belisi to our Pledge of Allegiance.
Can you please rise?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. Appreciate that. And now we'll move on to the approval of our agenda, and we start with a motion for approval. Is there a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa motions to approve the agenda.
We have a motion to approve, and is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and are there any objections or motions to amend the agenda? Objections or motions to amend? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as distributed by consent. And that brings us to public comments. So it's this portion of the evening that we have available to hear from our UP community and interested parties. We'll be taking public comments from people in the audience and also from people online. For the members of the audience, if you wish to make a comment tonight, it is perhaps best to sign up ahead of time. The sign-up sheet is in the corner. If you haven't signed up after we've been through the comment sheet, there'll be an opportunity for other people to come forward and speak as well. Once we're done with the people in the room, we'll move on to see if there's comments online as well. Let's see. Deborah, do you have the rules for comments available? Yes. It's just in that it is a little bit into the political season. The one I wanted to principally touch on was, again, 3 minutes per person. And comments that are related to an active campaign, individual or issue, are not encouraged at this point in our discussion. So if that would be a candidate or a active political item, since we have a local election coming up. Beyond that, I also want to set a little bit of an expectation. This part of public comments is for the council to hear what you have to say, and we're very much interested in doing that. But it is not a time that we have available for us to have a dialogue or a conversation. So council is interested in what your comments are. We're going to take note of those, but it isn't something where we have a back and forth over questions, just to be clear. So. And with that, I think we're ready to start our comment period. Thank you. And the first person I have on the list is Lonnie Slatter. If you could come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to talk with us.
Long A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it has to be followed by 2 T's.
Okay.
I taught high school for 7 years, so I have issues.
Thank you.
Many of my neighbors are here, and our big concern is that without notification of any kind, a level 3-6 fender has been put on our nice, charming cul-de-sac. And we feel as a city council, there should be some foresight into location of these individuals. We have, as we've sent letters and emails to some of you, we have 13 young children. There are 2 beautiful little girls, only 1 house down. We have 3 elderly widows. We feel this is a totally inappropriate placement of a sexual predator who has been doing this for 40 years. He has a long history of it. Yes, 2 days ago, he managed to walk out before his shadows caught up with him. and knocked on one of the elderly widow's doors. As a city council, I feel it's one of your jobs should be protecting us by, I realize we've been passed along to federal, city, sheriff. Everybody says it's not our problem, we can't do anything about it, that Governor Inslee allowed this during his Emergency Act powers. But as elected officials, dealing with a small city, we feel we have a right to have some kind of insight, and you should know where these places are going before they are sent there. There are better locations. There's a licensed co-op school 2 doors down. There's another one a block away. And Tim will address the issues of some of the other problems, but we feel notification would have been really nice, and hearing from you once we found out about this, he was placed there, and nobody responded to us, any of our emails or phone calls. And as tax-paying citizens who have passed 3 large property tax bills in the last year, we feel we have a right to have some kind of representation and protection. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me. I mean, if it does seem unreasonable to you, I mean, we've been told it's not your problem. We've been told it's not the sheriff's problem. We've been told it's not anybody's problem, but it's certainly our problem. He's on our street. And we feel Lakewood got theirs moved. And we feel this nice, quiet cul-de-sac down the road should not be a place, especially with the people who have lived there for 40 years and have now retired there, raised their children there, sent their children to Curtis, teachers in the district. And why are they allowed to put, this is not a transient neighborhood. These people have been there for years and have elected you, paid our taxes, and done everything we right, and we'd like something in return, a little protection. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Well, Mr. Slatter, thank you. I do appreciate hearing your comments and your concerns there. Next on this list is, I think the last word is, last name is Nan. It's Prudy Nan? Don? Non. Thank you. We'd invite you up to comment if you'd like.
I realize that you said that this wasn't a time for dialogue, but as neighbors, I feel exactly the same as Lonnie. We had no notice of this. It's a really quiet neighborhood. Our children are grown, but we have grandkids that are at our house at almost every Friday night, spending the night that play in our cul-de-sac, which is adjacent to where the level 3 sex offender is. And I know you said it's not time for dialogue, but we would like some answers. Like, can they house more people there? More sex offenders? Does he have an ankle bracelet? Is he being monitored? When will he have his ankle bracelet removed? I don't think they wear them forever. And I just had, the other day, I work from home, so I'm home by myself. Here came an Asian man shuffling down our driveway. And I was like, uh-oh. So I grabbed my phone, went to the bedroom, he turned around, and he walked into the next door neighbor's driveway, who are Asian, so I thought maybe he was there, he needed to come get a hold of us for some reason. It wasn't. He turned around, he came out of the driveway, he headed out towards the cul-de-sac, and literally the care people came and got him. So I'm not sure it was the said gentleman, but he was from their home. So it's disconcerting. So anyhow, that's just what I want to say. And I would like to know what's going to happen. Are there going to be more people allowed to be in that home? And it's sad. I realize that the police chief said it was their constitutional right, but we're taxpayers, and he's right, Lonnie's right. We have all been longevity in University Place, raised our kids, grandkids going to school here. It's sad that we just got no one to tell us anything. So that's basically what I have to say, and I'd like to know what steps going forward are for that gentleman in that home for our safety.
Thank you. I understand your concerns, too. The next last name is Menderos. Medeiros is what it looks like to me. I'm probably not doing it well. Medero, thank you.
And I too am concerned about this, having lived in this neighborhood for 44 years. We have, besides having a lot of children, we have widows that live there. And it was very upsetting to know that, what restrictions does this gentleman have? Is he allowed to leave the home? I mean, is he allowed to roam in the neighborhood? I don't understand how he was placed there, and I thought that we were supposed to be notified. I could be wrong about that, but this is very upsetting. We have widows that live there now. They won't even go out and walk their dogs anymore because it's a dead-end street, and here we have these 3 cul-de-sacs, and now we have this gentleman living there. And I'm just concerned about that. And is it going to take the value of our homes down if we want to sell them to families coming into the neighborhood? It's another concern. So that's all I have to say. I've lived there 44 years, never had a problem, and that's what my concern is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. Next on the list is Mary Smith.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I also represent Oast Drive West of University Place. And it's really nice to look into all of your eyes because I need to tell you that I am a mom of 3 very young girls who directly fit the description of people that this person has attacked. I have an 8-year-old and I have twin 4-year-olds. I want that to sink into your hearts right now at this moment and imagine what it's like for me to live less than 300 feet property line to property line. What does that feel like? At 3 p.m., 3 a.m., what does that feel like for a mom? And I will tell you, I don't tell many people, but my husband works nights sometimes. I'm home alone a lot with them. I don't want this to continue. I don't want more sex offenders to move into my neighborhood. Level 3 sex offenders, this is somebody who's really at it. You know what I mean? Like they're going for these kinds of kids and me. We are vulnerable. We need your help. I know that sometimes maybe the laws don't work, you know, you have to do your job as city council members with the laws. But is there something that you could do in your side time with the contacts that you have? Maybe there's somebody at the county or state level that you know, that you rub shoulders with, that you could talk about these topics with. So maybe this goes beyond your city council membership position and also just being a human being within University Place, considering young people, vulnerable people who live in a very safe dead-end cul-de-sac. We moved there for that reason. We live within 10 minutes walking to here. We want safety, number 1. I don't want to have to worry at night, afternoon, early morning, because this affects me every hour of the day. I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Ms. Smith. Next on the list is, the last name is Bougon, is it? Bouguet? I'm sorry if I'm not doing these justice, but B-O-G-U-E. Bogue, thank you.
So, Virginia didn't want to speak. I'm Tim Bogue. I didn't talk the box, but I did not speak. So.
Whoever would like to.
Good evening. So you guys have all seen the emails from me, I'm sure. I'm Tim Bogue. I'm the one that's been sending you guys the emails about this subject. I've lived on that street. My parents bought that house, the house that we live in 1991. When they moved away, I didn't want to lose that spot in our safe, beautiful little neighborhood. So I bought the house from my parents so that I can raise my children at that house. My wife and I, we are 2 houses down from where this level 3 sex offender was housed. We own a school. We own a licensed tutoring academy where we have many students every week coming through our home-based business. We homeschool. We help to teach other kids, other homeschooled kids. We We have a school 2 houses from where this man was housed. I understand that you guys don't feel there's much that you can do because it's mandated on a state level. This gentleman is under DOC supervision. If you'd like, I can give you his CCO's phone number. We've contacted her, we've contacted representatives, we've contacted senators at this point. All that we ask is that you guys, as the stewards of this city, we're a neighborhood that has been since the late 60s when this neighborhood was built, our neighborhood has been safe. There's been a small handful of crimes that have taken place on our street in the last 30 years since I've been there. And I mean, literally, you can count them on one hand. And suddenly we have, my next door neighbor is 88 years old and she's afraid to leave her house right now. She's the original owner of her house. She moved in 1970 or 71. I just ask of you guys to work with us and work with the state, work with the legislatures, work with the representatives, and work with the DOC to get this man moved. We don't want him there. We don't feel safe. I have a wife, I have children. They don't need to be exposed to that. I work for the Department of Corrections myself. I know what to expect from these people, and I know that I don't want my family to have to deal with the people that I deal with on a daily basis. They don't deserve that. I chose to do it as a career. My family did not. My neighbors and my community did not choose to do that. I did. I don't want to do that at home. I want to leave work at work. I want to come home to my safe neighborhood again. And I can't do that at this time. So if you guys, what I want from you guys is, I just want you guys to help us as a community. I want you guys to help work with us, work with the legislature, work with the representatives, and work with the DOC to keep this from happening. That's all I ask. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pope.
I'll be
Appreciate
sending
it.
more emails too.
All right. And I also have Evagina, is it? Did you want to speak as well? You're certainly welcome to.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting us, to be heard at least. So I want to speak as a teacher and as a mom. And this is difficult stage right now because it's literally we feel vulnerable. I can't walk right now on near my house anymore because I don't feel safe. I can't do my classes anymore, on a cul-de-sac, which we do rocketry class, for example, for kids. I can't because it doesn't feel safe either for kids. We begin to lose also clients, which my business, it's my income for providing my family, So right now we lost 2 students because parents stated that, no, this is not safe. We want that, once it will be removed, we will come back. It's not fair towards, towards society, towards people who work for this society, who try to do their best. Yeah. Like we work as volunteers in the Civil Air Patrol. We do, work with cadets. We work with our kids. We try to put something into, society. The same as all our neighbors. Like we know almost everyone. They are amazing people who are trying to do and does amazing job, to put something into this life. And right now, everyone on our street feels insecure and unsafe. When I try to call, to resolve, anything, I'm sorry, but I'm like a ball, bumped to each of the representatives, each of the department. I should not be feeling that hopeless, I feel hopeless right now. I feel like I need to run away from here, which I don't want because we have so much going on. We have life here, and we want to put into society. It's not that we are, how to say, we want to turn back on you or anything else. We want to do something So we ask, your help and your, protection, and maybe to add in the law, like that University Place district should not be, having these sex offenders near us. That's it. Like something. You guys can do something, for us. We are small, but we pay our taxes. We do something, also to have you as our representative. Right now, we feel like we are fighting alone. We're lonely, and it should not be like that. You are something for us. You are the voices of us. Thank you so much. Thank you for your.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Thank you. I believe that completes the people that have previously signed up. Maybe we have some more names. We can recirculate those. I've checked off the ones we've talked with. I have Donna Melrose. I'm not saying it right. Okay, okay, we're good? Okay, all right. Okay, so is there anyone else in tonight's in-person audience that would like to speak about this particular item? And we may have some other items coming afterwards, but I thought we would just get this one completed. All right. Yes. So I'll have a brief statement at the end that may or may not address your question, but during the course of the meeting we have council rules we're going to adhere to. Outside of the meeting on an individual basis, it's a little bit different. But in the meeting, I don't have that ability right now. Sorry. Anyone else on this issue that would like to speak? Please.
I also pulled up his.
And if I could have your name and
Taylor Slater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Claire,
Thanks. I just wanted to just touch on that. We understand that these offenders are everywhere, right? Like, we're not dumb, but this man is rated as violent. You can read all about all of the awful things he did. This isn't like some grooming situation where it was like going on for years or whatever. This is like offense after offense, ranging from 3 years old to 6 years old as far as we can see. Like, this isn't just my kids. I also want to point out that I homeschool, and my kids, we live on 35th, so we have no barrier whatsoever. Like, if someone's walking by, my kids are out there. I watch my kids like a hawk, but I also can't be there every moment, and it would just take 2 seconds for this guy because he lives so darn close to us. I understand too, like, there's risk in letting my kids be outside, and I'm not dumb to that, but also I'm not going to walk them closer to him. I'm not going to invite this man to be closer to us, right? Like, we don't feel as safe anymore. The security is gone, and that sucks. Like, I don't want to live where we live anymore because we don't feel safe anymore. My kids are not safe. They're young and they're small. It would take 2 seconds for someone to come grab them. And it just sucks that this is the world we live in, that I have to show my children this guy's nasty face and say, this is the man you need to look out for if you're playing outside by yourself. So I just wanted to let you guys know we're not blind to the fact that they're everywhere, because some people like to point that out. You know, we're not dumb, but we're not going to invite him over. So, and I don't think any of you would either. You know, so that's all.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing what this is like for you. Anyone else on this item? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to make a comment to the council tonight on another subject? Anybody else? Okay. No one online right now? Okay. Very good. So shortly we'll close public comment. We are in the process of setting up a community meeting on this subject. It will not be a council meeting, so it will be a little more flexible. And the police chief, I believe, will be central to that. We either have or will have shortly a sign-up sheet for anyone who would like to be contacted when that meeting is. Chances are it'll be an evening meeting is my guess, but that remains to be seen. We were trying to make it accessible for this group. We'll have the sign-up sheet in the back counter, and we'd look for your email or contact information on it. Do we, is that available now? Great, well, let's go, we can go ahead and put that out. In that meeting, you'll have an opportunity to hear more details, and we will also extend an invitation to other elected officials that serve you. So, and see if they would like to attend as well. Thank you all for coming in and sharing your thoughts. This is very important to all of us. And with that, I'm going to close public comments. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Pro Tem makes a motion to approve the consent agenda as approved.
Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any objections to approval of the consent agenda? Objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. All right, and next on our agenda is a public hearing, two public hearings, the first of which is on carry forward budget adjustments. Everyone that is here, you are welcome to stay, but you don't have to stay. This may not be the reason you're here, but we're happy to have our citizens engaged in this too. We will open the public hearing where city staff will make an initial statement. Council will see if there's any clarifying questions, and then we'll take public testimony. And Leslie Blaisdell is going to help us with that. Leslie.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Leslie Blaisdell, Finance Director. Tonight, for public hearing and council consideration, is the carry forward budget adjustment. The council did review this during study session held on July 17th. I'll wait for Amanda to get the PowerPoint up. We'll go through the items once again for the benefit of our public watching. Thanks. If we can go to slide number 2, Amanda. Okay, the carry forward adjustments recognize the carry forward of funding from the 2022 budget for reappropriation in 2023. The reappropriation is comprised primarily of beginning fund balance adjustments, capital improvement projects, internal service fund carry forwards, and continuing grant funding. We've also included some other requested changes to the budget because the budget was prepared a while ago and things change over time. So next slide. The most significant change you'll note is in our restricted NCIP funds. This change is mostly reflective of carry forwards in revenues and expenditures in the Park CIP, Public Works CIP, Municipal CIP, and any related interfund transfers. In the Public Works CIP fund, we're carrying forward fund balances and previously budgeted 2022 project expenditures into 2023, totaling $24.6 million. Many of those are projects that have already started. As you know, we budget the full amount of the project in 1 year, and what's left at the end gets carried forward to complete the project. In the Municipal CIP fund, we're carrying forward a small amount, $1,500, for a grease interceptor project. We were awaiting the final work and invoice. And there are also 2 new items added to that budget. One is an increase in the project for the Public Works Shop parking lot improvement project. The original budget was for $40,000, and the current cost estimate for that work is now $50,000, so we're adding $10,000 to that. And an additional $200,000 is for the asphalt repairs and replacement. Originally, staff had hoped to use $200,000 of pavement maintenance funds for that project, but those funds are part of our pavement management for streets, so those funds can't be used for that, so it is being added to not utilize those funds. And then there's an addition of $20,000 for design costs of a public workshop office expansion. This would be funded with a REIT transfer. And as you know, REIT dollars are used for capital projects. In the Parks CIP fund, we're carrying forward fund balance and previously budget project expenditures totaling $3.58 million. The adjustment also includes the adjustment of $588,500 for projects to be funded with ARPA dollars that council approved late last year. This is just getting those dollars marked in the budget. Next slide. For general carry forwards in the revenue fund, we are carrying forward the remaining ARPA dollars that are appropriated to projects but were left unspent as of last year, so they're being reappropriated to this year. We're carrying forward a Department of Commerce grant, the town center land sale that was originally expected to happen last year and would possibly happen this year, and some Department of Ecology grant funding that was left unspent but carries forward to this year. The next slide is our expenditure carry forwards. A variety of things. The largest is the capital restricted monies that come in, can only be used for the UPTV capital restricted. We have some professional services and consulting and various items throughout some other departments. In finance, we have the monies budgeted for the utility tax audit that hopefully will be wrapping up soon. I got an email from him this week. There's just one more that they're trying to get the rest of the documents from. We've also carried forward in the street fund, pavement maintenance funds that were not spent last year. Those will be carried forward for use either this year or in future years. In the police fund, we're carrying forward monies for city attorney specialized legal services. We're carrying forward the monies that we received from officer credits last year to be utilized for overtime and COO ramp up this year, as well as the jail savings costs that were used for the levy election costs. And then in the swim fund, there's some training and minor equipment. And lastly, in the fleet fund, there was one utility vehicle, replacement vehicle that was ordered last year but did not come in yet, so that is those funds are being carried forward.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Leslie.
And slide number 6. The IT fund usually has our largest amount of carry forwards. Everything from minor software packages to deferred hardware purchases. Their total is $1,333,000. There's some deferred training, repair and maintenance services, and the remaining ARPA funding that was designated for IT use. Slide number 7 takes us into the other adjustments that we make just to clean things up in the budget. On the revenue side, we're increasing our sales tax figures by $400,000, some increases to utility, to franchise fees, and investment interest. As you know, our investment interest has come back as interest rates come up. Our most, at the low point, we were getting 0.4% interest. Our last month's was over 5% that money is bringing in now. And then some adjustments to the TBD fees and sewer franchise and sewer utility tax and the water utility tax. As you know, those were newer fees, and our best guess estimate is a little off the mark, so we're just adjusting to get that in line with what we expect to bring in. Remaining revenue adjustments are interfund transfers related to the CIP projects. Slide number 8 are our adjustments to the expenditure accounts for new items. The general fund has some changes reflected in city council, HR, elections, and the events budget. In the street fund, we've increased traffic control, professional services, and electricity costs. Additionally, we're carrying forward an expense item from the monies we collected last year from insurance settlements. If someone runs over a street pole, we get the insurance money to replace that. We're carrying that forward and putting it into the expense budget because their supply of poles on hand has been used up, so they can reorder and get that supply stocked so that when one comes down, they have one to put back up. In the swim fund, they asked for, we're increasing minor equipment and rental costs. We did do an increase in the fleet fund to increase fuel costs. As you know, fuel prices have risen, so we want to make sure there's enough budget there. And in property management, we increased repair and electricity costs due to increasing costs. Slide number 9 is the one-time monies. As you know, in the general fund, we saw unexpected revenue and expenditure savings in 2022 totaling $3.9 million. The carry forward amounts and cost adjustments included in this request total $2.8 million, and that leaves a little over $1 million in what we call one-time monies. The 2021 one-time monies of $1.1 million remained unappropriated, and at the council retreat, council suggested appropriating $65,000 for communications content creator and $250,000 for possible recreation expenses, and putting the remaining $1.877 million in a council contingency fund for use in the future as council would like to do. And so I have included the breakdown showing that how we came up with the $1.8 million. So that is in this budget in the general fund as a contingency line item for future appropriation. Slide number 10 is just the update to the financial forecast. It has been updated to include all of these adjustments, and all existing services and legal and contractual obligations can be met with existing revenues through the biennium and out 10 years, with the exception of the street fund, which starts to go negative in 2032 based on our forecast. But I know this is an item that is on council's list to address in the coming years. So last slide, slide 11. So I wanted to see if anyone had any further questions since the study session that I can help answer.
Very good. Well, thank you, Leslie, for the quick recap. Of course, council, we've had a chance to talk about this on several occasions as we're getting ready for this. Nonetheless, we might still have some clarifying questions. Once we get done with that and I have the benefit of public comment, we'll get into consideration. So before we do that, though, are there any clarifying questions? Well, I have one. So on the $1.8 million, that's an appropriation today. You had mentioned that it would, that is in contingency today. You had mentioned that it wouldn't be a future appropriation. Is that more specific council action for that to happen?
So in order to utilize the contingency funds, it is appropriated as an expense, but in order for us to use it for anything, it would come to council for approval to use it, and then that adjustment can be made to shift it to whatever department or budget that money would be needed in.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we can open our public hearing. And with that, I'm opening the public hearing on the carry forward, let me get the action title in front of me. Carry forward budget adjustment for 2023. And we would invite members of the public to come up and make comment. I would have up to 3 minutes available. We will also see if there's anyone online who would make comment when we get done with on-site comments. So anyone here that would like to comment on the budget? All right. I'm not seeing any. So do we have anyone online indicating that? Okay. With that, we're going to close our public hearing comment, and we'll move on to council consideration on this issue. So,
Mayor Pro Tem makes a motion to pass an ordinance amending the 23-24 biennium budget for the 2023 carry forward appropriations and adjustments.
okay, we have a motion to amend the budget as indicated. Is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. We have a second. The motion is proper. We can proceed with our consideration. Councilmember Wood, do you have anything you'd like to discuss on the consideration?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. And Councilmember Belisi?
No, none at this time.
All right. All right. And Councilmember McCluskey?
I'm good, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to comment on the Leslie's work and the staff's work on this. I know that there's a lot of numbers and a lot of work, and I know that we all feel the same up here, but it needs to be said, because sometimes it needs to be said, and don't, just know that we do appreciate what it takes to run those numbers and keep it straight for us to understand. And I think we have a good process. We talk about it at the retreat. We have a finance committee meeting, and we have the materials in front of us. And I think that the council here has done a very good job in directing staff and where we want the monies to be, and you guys have done a very good job doing that, along with keeping everything straight. So thank you again. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Very good. And with regards to my comments, just I think Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa captured it very well. I appreciate the good hard effort in that, and I think with that we're ready to go to vote. Do a voice vote.
Councilmember Wood.
Councilmember Wood, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Aye.
Councilmember Belisi.
Councilmember Belisi, aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Aye.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, aye.
We have 5 ayes.
Motion passes. Thank you. We can move on to our next subject for public hearing, our 6-year transportation improvement plan and related action. And Mr. Jack Ackland is here to help us through this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Jack Eklund, Director of Public Works, and tonight I'm bringing to you for public hearing and consideration our annual update to our city's 6-year transportation improvement plan. This plan was studied at a previous council meeting last month, and it covers the years of 2024 to 2029. As a reminder, the City of University Place is required by state law to adopt and annually update a 6-year transportation improvement plan. The primary changes to this plan update are we have removed the Chambers Creek Road Phase 1 project, as that will be complete by the end of the year. We have added a Grandview Intersection Improvement Project, which is a project that we are looking at constructing a roundabout at 36 and Grandview. And for which we're planning to apply for a TIB grant just next week. So it's timely, the adoption here. That project will address some of the safety concerns we've had in that stretch of road on Grandview between 36th and 3rd is kind of the area we've had some issues. Other issue, we've also updated funding statuses of 3 projects. That's to reflect recent grants awards. That's the Project 14, the 40th Street Phase 3 project, in which we received construction funding from PSRC out in the years of 2025. UP crosswalk improvements, in which we received a Safe Routes to School grant, which would cover the years of 24 and 25. And that's the project that would also improve safe crosswalks and lighting along Grandview Drive and 40th Street as well. And then also the 57th Avenue Connection Project, in which we received some additional state funding through our legislators, and there's also some county ARPA sewer money as well. And then finally, the project schedules and costs have been updated, reflecting 2024 dollars. The approval of this plan does not commit the city to any financial expenditures. Rather, each project will be reviewed individually by the City Council each relevant budget cycle, and as a component of the capital improvement plan. The approval of this 6-year plan, however, does create eligibility for the city to apply for various grant opportunities. Many of the grant funding sources, such as the TIB one we're talking about, require an individual project to be listed on the city's 6-year transportation improvement plan. In addition, this transportation plan provides the indication to our neighboring jurisdictions of our transportation planning needs, as well as our direction in the city. This concludes my report, and with that, I recommend approval of the proposed 6-year plan as provided for in the council bill attached in your council packet.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jack. So, same process as last time. Anyhow, if anybody has any clarifying questions, Councilmember Wood.
Yes. So, just making sure I'm reading your chart right here right. Under start date, you have PERWCN with 24, 24, 25. I'm looking at item number 4, of course. So does that mean, so can you translate PERWCN for me real quick? What those stand for? I'm assuming CN is construction, but I'm guessing on that. It's the middle column.
I shut off my volume there, sorry. So on the column, so PE is, if we look at 4, PE is design. So
Design,
preliminary
okay.
engineering, what that stands for. RW stands for right-of-way, and construction is, CN is construction, like you said. For number 4, we've plugged in some numbers in there on right-of-way. We're actually hoping to, 36 has some wide right-of-way, so our goal is to be able to fit it in within the existing right-of-way, but we wanted to plug in some numbers in case, while we're fine-tuning the application, if it looks like we do have to have a phase for right-of-way, we have ourselves covered in there, so.
Okay, and can those, since you put in 24, I'm assuming that's dependent on us actually getting the grant?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
got it, thank you.
The TIB grant is a very quick turnaround grant. So those, if you do get it, they expect money to start being spent essentially the following year. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McCluskey?
All right, thank you, Mayor. So on project 31, the UP school crosswalk and improvements, can you hear me okay, Jack?
Yes.
All right. So that is going from, so it's a continuous linear sidewalk from UPP to Narrows View.
So so we already have sidewalks here, but it's upgrading
Right.
those sidewalks and the
Oh,
street
okay.
lighting on that route from on 27th, about at the Elwood intersection.
Okay.
And then going up to Grandview. So from 27th to
Elwood
Grandview.
Okay,
And then turning right on
Grandview.
Grandview, driving all the way past the junior high, Grandview, turning up on through the roundabout, turning left up at Olympic, and then turning left again on 40th, which then you'd follow all the way uphill past the high school, and then eventually end at the
To get to Sunset.
back of Narrows View. So,
But you could have to get Sunset to cross over.
yep,
Right.
yep.
Oh, okay.
and
So it's
so-
basically sidewalk improvement pieces.
upgrading
components to
all
that.
of our ADA ramps. It's
okay.
also upgrading all the lighting to LED lighting, so improve the lighting and add some rectangular rapid flashing beacons at all the crosswalks.
Okay.
So to make the crosswalks both better lit and easier to, more noticeable for kids crossing. And then it also includes some speed radar signs. We will be doing a raised
Okay.
crosswalk at the main crosswalk at the junior high. And
Oh, good.
And
Good.
also doing a raised intersection at Elwood and 27th. So that's at the one end, we'll raise up the entire intersection. We have quite a lot of, that's a pretty heavy pedestrian crosswalk, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of speeds there. So we're trying to
Yes.
kind of cover that whole thing. And so that's the gist of it, at least.
Wow, okay. Thank you. And then the 35th and Grandview piece, so you said 36 to,
So with the application we're working on, we're looking at doing a roundabout at 36th Street. And 36 is right in the middle of that curve. And so we've had both accidents at 36 and 35th.
right?
35th itself doesn't lend itself very well to a roundabout because we'd be probably taking out 3 of the 4 homes at the intersection.
Not good.
But 36, we've looked at that. If we can get a roundabout, it would help address, it's a bit of a skewed intersection, so it checks the box there. It also would help, part of the issue at 35th is if people are traveling the speed limit, sight distance is great. But sadly, we can't make people travel the speed limit out there. And so if we put a roundabout right for the curve, and that's the section where the sight distance gets limited if they're going 40, it would be hard pressed for someone, even if they gun it past a roundabout. So that would be a good, both a speed control and then help our sight distance for that. So, so it helps to, hopefully it help address issues we've been having in both of those intersections.
Yeah, because there is limited sight going up 35th as well. I understand limited sight where you're at, but that's probably a harder fix.
That one's tricky. 35th is
And
a
going
hard
down where
Yeah.
they speed down to
And the
Grandview from 35th.
35th, our sidewalk project will help address some of that. The one that'd be next year, end of next year that we'd be doing that stretch.
Okay.
That'll help sight lines and visibility with street lighting. So hopefully all of these kind of paired together will help out that situation.
Right, and the school one is is it that safe routes to school?
The crosswalk is safe routes to school. The one we're applying for, and there's no guarantee if we get it, the 36, the Grandview intersection ones, they're talking about the roundabout, that's going to be a state-funded, that would be a state transportation improvement board application that we're going to make.
Okay, all right, good. And my final question is some of the residential streets, like particularly, I don't want to say Day Island. Day Island's been addressed in many different issues and situations, and we're blessed to have that. But to get it on the transportation improvement project list, to look at some of the stormwater management, water runoff, street conditions, erosion, and the South Spit is hard to fix. But, to get that in your purview and on the next round we discuss it, just to look at that to see if it's those streets are good candidates for that, particularly the South Spit, but that's...
Yeah, and some of that will be also refined as we go through two things. The pavement condition is kind of, we have a catch-all one here that kind of addresses, it's like a pavement citywide paving plan or street overlay program, but the storm drainage, that's also being looked at as part of that overall, the swim comp plan we're working on. And so once we have that capital list refined, then we can start incorporating some of those if they're street related into this.
Okay. Right, and I have a question. It's off topic, so I'm not going to ask it, but it's an interesting one. Maybe I should just say it so you're not curious.
Okay.
To talk about the impervious management of surfaces in our city that creates larger issues with flooding throughout our whole city, because there's areas that I've noticed as I walk or drive, as we all do, and wondering if there's a different solution or if it's been negatively impacted by what the homeowners sometimes do or with our projects. So that's a question that, maybe we can ask in study or our staff meeting.
Yeah.
And give me some information and insight into that. I'd appreciate it. All right. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Wood, you had another question?
I do, thank you, Mayor. We received an email, you were copied on it, from the principal of Heritage Christian School.
Yeah.
Could you give me any background or history on that? Is it part of the 67th Street project? If not, why not? Can you just give me a little history there?
Sure. So it wasn't part of the original application. We hadn't heard the request for a crosswalk there didn't actually come until after we already had a project, had a grant moving forward, and then requests came in. A lot of times with folks, they kind of think that, crosswalk's a simple thing, right? If we can just get the paint on the street, that's great, it solves the problem. And unfortunately, the streets like Chambers Creek Road, or in this case 67th, right, are a little too busy and too fast for us to be comfortable to just do it with paint. And it gives a lot of, in the past when we've seen that, it just, instead of adding safety, it gives pedestrians a false sense of security. And so we haven't wanted to do that, because that actually has created some more conflicts, and we've had some accidents in the past where we've done that. Thankfully, no one seriously injured, but it was kind of a wake-up call for us and scary. So, and I know in the email the principal referenced what happened down at Charles Wright, and that was it was a long process itself. For any of those things, to do a crosswalk on those streets, we really only recommend doing a full-blown signalized crosswalk, which is outside the scope of the 67th project and would add about $250,000 to do it. On Charles Wright, we had that for many years request to do that, and we took the request and the support from both the neighbors and the school, and we then took those and went to look for another grant opportunity to see if we could do something there. And that's why there is a crosswalk that will eventually have the signal out there. Right now, we're still waiting on the signal components to come in from a material procurement. I suspect, and I was going to get back to the principal tomorrow, respond back, but I think if they're driving by, they see it, oh, well, you just have paint on the road there, and if you could do it for them, why can't you do it for us? But ultimately, that's going to have the signal as well. So it's a safety issue of why we can't just do the paint, and then it's just a financial issue on the signal. His other request in there was a little more puzzling to me because his request was a school zone signage, which we've already conveyed to them. That would be that school zone signage into our project, and so there must be a miscommunication between the people our right-of-way folks have been dealing with and him. Maybe that lost the gap there. So that one we are accommodating and will be doing.
Okay, could we, at some point in the future, look at the advisability of adding in a signalized crosswalk there, if that makes sense or not, and just give us something more, because I mean,
yeah,
$250,000, while not chump change, is certainly findable if that's something that we decide isn't worth doing.
And we certainly could, if it pleases the council, I mean, that we could adopt this and amend another project if we'd like to add that in there. I believe that is something similar of what was done in front of Charles Wright.
Yeah, Charles Wright.
It wasn't able to get in this one for the meeting because the request came, today.
Right.
But I think that could be appropriate just to say if you want to have a proposed amendment to add it in, that could be done.
Okay, thank you.
Jackson, somehow this will be tied to the hearing, but in the Charles Wright example, the neighborhood did an outreach to council. I want to say that was 4 years ago.
I went through, as I was looking at, in kind of preparing a response to get the background to the principal at Heritage Christian. The first request for a crosswalk out there I got was in 2011. Okay. And then there was another big push in 2016, and so that's the
2016 is actually
And then we applied for and got the grant in either 18 or 20. I think it's 20, and then it gets those are drawn out process, but
they are. But because of this, I can appreciate that because of the need to make sure we are as safe as design will allow us to be, and we're working within adopted standards, that people's lives are associated with that, their safety is associated with it. We need to do what we can. And we need to take the long roads. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, then we're going to open the public hearing, in which case any members of the public in the room or online are welcome to make comment. We'll be available for about 3 minutes on our per comment up to that length of time on our Transportation Improvement Plan amendment for 2023. And with that...
we have somebody up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was waiting
I'm about to
finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My comments are about 27th Street and, I'm sorry, Dennis Swan, 2623 Lemons Beach Road. I should know that by now. Anyway, 27th Street has experienced this gigantic growth in apartments here just recently, going down Mildred, and then back to Haps Auto Wrecking is going to increase. And then also I just heard that the gardens area up there is going to be apartments next to the Cheers West. Now, we've narrowed that street down significantly and installed all kinds of expensive sidewalks, street lights, signage, and everything along there. And with, what did they say, 395 possible apartments in Fircrest across the street in the Metal Marine Pilot Zone, this is going to be a nightmare for us trying to get out of town. I can't imagine what it's going to take to get from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill, let alone when Red Apple starts growing some things down there. Not a forest, but it's going to be a pretty big development. So are we going to look at a plan to widen access again on 27th Street, going into the bottleneck of Mildred and Fircrest and 19th Street, which is going to have so-called trolley traffic on it, and how many years of construction going down the middle of that road? Does that leave us with 40th to get out of town over to Orchard and whatever? I don't know. I think that there's some major thought needs to be put into a lot of what's happening in our city as far as that stretch of roadway. Bridgeport's not going to do it. It's a dead end on both ends trying to get out of town more or less. So anyway, just something I would like the council to look at, possibly getting us a wider road again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flatt. Appreciate the thought. So, very good. I don't think we have any more comments in the room, but then do we have anything online? Okay. All right. Appreciate the forethought to get an idea of what we have going on. I'm, however, going to close the public hearing, and we'll move on to council consideration.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, motions to adopt a resolution approving the 6-year transportation improvement plan for years 2024 to 2029.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. We have a motion to approve, or rather to adopt the plan, and is there a second?
Councilmember Belisi, I second.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. Is there any discussion? If no discussion, then we'll go to a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wood?
Aye.
Councilmember McCluskey?
Yes.
Councilmember Belisi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa?
Aye.
Mayor Worthington?
Mayor Worthington, aye.
We have 5 ayes.
Okay, the motion passes, and we can now move on to our city manager report and council reports.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Live music continues this month with 6 concerts. July started off with a bang. We had good attendance at the concerts. Well, this month we've got 6 concerts at our 2 venues, Current Orchard, 2 more concerts, and 4 additional concerts here on Market Square. At Current Orchard, the concerts occur on Thursdays every 2 weeks. So next week and 2 weeks after that, again on a Thursday. Information is at our city website. The same goes with Market Square, which happens every Wednesday this month. So you can check all that information out on our city website, and click on the city events tab on our city homepage, and that'll lead you to the information about those concerts. So that's my report.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Zuck. And the concert schedule is great. I've heard very good reports. Hope to be able to catch some. I'm afraid I haven't been able to do that yet. But
I forgot to add the most important thing. What is not each band, but we also have a wide variety: blues, jazz, bluegrass, Caribbean, and South American music. So kudos to our city events coordinator, Marion Holloway, for making this all happen.
Yeah, very good. Good reports. So, Councilmember Wood, would you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Back to the public comments on the OS Drive Level 3 sex offender. I would like more detailed information than we've had time to get to date, whether we do a study session or something like that on this, but I would like to look at everything from does a licensed homeschool qualify as a school when it comes to distances for placement of these offenders? Because if it's licensed and the state knows about it, I'd really like to know how that works. I'd also like to know if or what kind of regulations we can put in place as a city on adult homes. Obviously, we don't have anything in place now, but I would like to know if there's something we can add in the future. The question of, will another one get placed there is actually a very valid one. or somewhere else in our city, and I'd like just to have a better understanding of how all this fits and what we can do. I understand their concerns. So, thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Wood, thank you. Councilmember McCluskey.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to ditto Councilmember Wood's comments on both the OATH situation, but look at the city comprehensively in regards to that as well. I know it's kind of a tough lemon to squeeze right now, but see if there's any cracks in that glacier. Certainly working with our legislative bodies in our state senate as to the fallout of some of their decisions that they had made. Also the crosswalk. I would like to have discussions and going forward on that too. I think safety, and especially with our around our school crossing, even if it's private or public, they should be treated equitably, and to get some of those things in place like we had done for our public schools, for our private schools as well, which is, years and years in the making, right? So we're making great progress. We got one, let's see if we can go after the second one. National Night Out on Crime. That was a great event. We had about 8 stops. 1 stop was a no-show, but otherwise, we had a great time. There was people were happy and enjoying themselves, getting to know their neighbors, and so it was. Jennifer did a great job in organizing that. I gave away a lot of city swag, so people were happy with that as well. And then movie in the park. Our city manager, Steve Sugg, was there. And Matt Kaiser with his daughter's Girl Scout troop, the Cadet Girl Scout troop, selling popcorn for $1 and giving away water. And Bliss Ice Cream was the hit. The other, and of course the bouncy houses and the toys there. They're always a hit, but everyone had a great time. The weather was great. I brought my 3 grandkids and a couple of their, parental units. And we had a great time watching Tangled. So kudos for you guys. And also I forgot what they're called, the Northwest characters.
Magic in the Pacific Northwest?
Magic in the Pacific Northwest, thank you. That's always there for our events. They were also a hit, and they did a routine in the very beginning, got the people engaged, so another well-done event by Ms. Holloway. So give her my thank yous for me. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Appreciate these comments and keeping us posted. Councilmember Belisi.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to echo my fellow council members regarding the public comment we received this evening. I think it is imperative that when we do hold a public meeting that our state legislators are all in attendance so that they can also hear the impact of decisions that are made that take things out of our hands here in the city. But I'd like for us to be prepared with direct references to RCWs, et cetera, that prohibit any action on our part. And I'm hoping that we can get a DOC representative in the meeting also that can explain the release process that they must follow for sex offenders. I do commend the citizens that did come out tonight. They had some really heartfelt messages, and it's very difficult sitting here on the dais and not being able to respond and let these citizens know that since we've received their comments in email form, that we have been in discussion about how to handle this. Unfortunately, government's a lot slower than a lot of us would like, and in this particular situation, it seems to be even slower in getting response. But I look forward to having that public meeting. I hope that we can all be in attendance to hear it, and that we can get the key people to the table that can also explain the process to our citizens. And if there are options that we have that we can do, that we have some preliminary idea of how to present that to the community. So, and again, National Night Out, the 6 neighborhoods we visited, it was fabulous to see it. One neighborhood actually hired a band that was out there. They had the largest attendance there, and it was wonderful music, and it was a great evening. And I'm sad to say that this is my last National Night Out, because I actually find that to be one of my favorite events that I attend. Despite being cornered by some residents with their complaints, I think the majority of it is always positive. And it's just nice to see neighbors reintroducing themselves and just getting out and having a good time and enjoying our summer. So, thank you.
Very good, thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a add-on comment to the public comments and what some of the council members mentioned, and that is, if we do, I highly suggest, that's what I would like as a council member, is that if we do, when we do invite experts from other areas to this meeting to answer the questions, we need to we should request that they be the experts, not just someone that's going to come and say, well, here's the RCW, and no, I don't really have a lot of information about this particular situation. I think that we need to request a specialist that understands the situation and can provide, to the extent that they can legally, all the questions that have been brought. We can give them those questions. The bracelet, when they actually can be released, can they move around the neighborhood? I mean, I don't know, but we need someone there to answer those specific questions, and not someone that says, well, we'll get back and we don't know, here's the RCW. I don't think that is, I as an advocate for my constituents certainly want that answered for them, one way or another. And I'll be very disappointed, and I plan to attend. Hopefully I'm not on vacation, and I would like to have that meeting. I believe that we all as a council members should attend that. I think they look to us as council members, not just one, but all of us, to engage in what they're saying. And I think that talking about how they feel, I really feel that they would really feel a lot better if their representatives from this city show up, and not just the mayor and then the city manager and the attorney and the chief. They want to see us, who they voted for. So I'd like to see that meeting done so that most of us can attend, and not, and so then we get everybody else in line with that. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Appreciate that. I have a few comments as well. First off, National Night Out was another great success, a special evening for folks. Let's see. All in all, I think we had about 45 neighborhood parties, which is kind of where we've been running. I'm still blown away every time I hear that number. But it's what we've been doing year after year, and what Jennifer has been able to coordinate very well. And the engagement of our first responders, be it our deputies or our police officers, I should say, or District 10 or others, has been great. The legislative director for Maryland Strickland, Congresswoman Strickland, rode with me on this particular one. It was very nice of Liz to participate, and she got a chance to talk to the folks here in the community. And I think we have another event that she'll be invited to soon. It was a good evening. We had one couple of special things going on this one. I don't want to. I'm going to hold off mentioning this individual's name. Some of you may be aware of this, but we have a resident in our community who, about 4 years ago, offered to provide to the Sheriff's Department on our behalf a canine dog that had been trained appropriately for police work. And there was some hang-ups on that for a variety of reasons. But on last Tuesday, I was part of a small group that, without notifying this person, brought them the trained canine in uniform, if you will, with the new handler, and they got a chance to meet it. And it was the first time they actually knew that this had finally been achieved. So I think you'll see more about this in news articles, in the headlines, and perhaps some other things. But it was a very special night, and a very generous soul who provided that. Kodak Rainier is the name of the dog, just a very handsome beast. I don't know how old he is. He's probably 2 or something like that, but full of energy. And he's trained for search primarily. So I don't think we in this area are using dogs in drug searches now. They're search and rescue or search and find things. So that was kind of very special that night. And Kodak was with us every of the 7 parties we're assigned to. I think he was with us each time. It was a fun evening. There's been some other fun. It was my pleasure to start the starting horn at the Twisted Cider Run for Fun Run. That was 10 days ago or so, and we had a few more people than last year, closer to about 350.
389.
389? I heard 389 it is. I know one of them, one of the runners, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, ran in that event along with his bride. Though you'll have to, you can ask her who, or him, either one, who outran the other. But it was a lot of fun. And a great turnout, and folks enjoyed the giant pretzels and everything that goes with it. So that's been fun. Previous to that, for the first time in 7 years, Joint Base Lewis McChord had their annual, or their air show and warrior exhibit, and that was a great event. I think we all, council members, had an invitation from Commanding General Xavier Brunson to attend in the commander's tent. I was able to take advantage of that, and that was pretty cool. So, and a great show. And the Thunderbirds were there, very exciting, amazing what they can do with the planes, and all the different planes. And they demonstrated a strike force where taking a demonstration or how to take a hostile airfield. And it was taking place right in front of you, and the 16th Cab was the feature event as they came in and helped to subdue the forces and make for a safe control of that hostile airfield. So it was a fun day. It's been a very active summer in a lot of different ways. It's been a pleasure to be part of that. And it's good to be able to get everybody, at least most of us, back together tonight. Of course, tonight we did have our neighborhood's understandable concerns with a level 3 sex offender being in their neighborhood. And it's in a very, as I said earlier, an important issue to all of us. There's a lot to learn here and a lot to become familiar with. I think moving forward with a community meeting will help share some information in a little less, if you will, stilted environment of a council meeting that is in some ways a little, it's good for getting business done, but maybe not so good about sharing information. And so this will be a little better approach, I believe. Certainly we'll look for a time when we can do that where hopefully all of council can attend, or at least those that are available or wish to. We also want it so the neighborhoods can attend as well. So it's that balance point that we need to get to. I think the comments about having people there that have answers to real questions is very good. And some idea of what some of those outstanding questions are would be helpful as well. As I mentioned earlier, it's certainly my intention that we would invite other elected officials that represent these people to this. Whether they attend is their choice, but we'll get the invitations to them.
Or even their representative.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, what?
Or even their representative if they can't.
Yes. Yeah. In some cases, that is the most realistic expectation. But that's very helpful. And so they can get a sense, they being the other elected officials, can get a sense of what it's like on the ground. I think that's very important. So we'll move forward with that. I hope we also will be able to get some information on, I assume, on the city website and do our usual good outreach work on those things. And we'll see about the venue and the timing of all of that. On a future calendar item, while the traditional apple squeeze isn't taking place this year, and that's been in our publications, the city's publications and other venues, there is a apple pick that's taking place instead. It's just the squeeze part that isn't going to happen. But the pick will be on the traditional date of August 27th, starting with the park opening. And folks will be able to pick certain trees that have not been labeled no pick. It's pretty obvious when you get there. Just wanted to reinforce that date. So no apple squeeze for cider, but you can get bunches of apples that you pick yourself or help clean. So still not too bad of a deal. And of course that is free. I think that covers my points for this evening, and we can move on to our study session unless there's second chances someplace. Don't see any. So we're going to close our regular meeting and move into a study session.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Lisa Patorek with the Administrative Services Department. And tonight we're going to be talking about the Hazard Mitigation Plan. We're calling this a mini update because we have focused on 2 sections of the plan. Just to give a little bit of background, the Hazard Mitigation Plan is a 208-page addendum to the overall county's plan, so it's quite large. Thus the focus right now just on 2 of the main sections. It covers the years 2020 through 2025, so that's the current time period that this plan is under currently. And it really focuses on these items right here. So the purpose of the Hazard Mitigation Plan obviously is to create plans, projects, and foresight to help protect life and property, ensure the continuity of operations during and after emergencies, strengthen partnerships with our neighboring jurisdictions, the county, the state, other emergency management types of organizations, in addition to the rest of the community, business arenas, and so forth. It strives to protect and restore natural resources. One of the major tenets is to increase public preparedness. Preparedness really starts at home with the individual. And then, of course, we want to promote economic sustainability. So what most of this update focuses on is under Section 5, which mainly is like a projects or plans list. And so under Section 5, in your documents tonight, it's about 30-plus pages of things that the city has looked at that we can begin working on currently to help prepare for some emergencies that may be coming down the line. We've also done a short update to Section 2. And the purpose of updating Section 2 provided more acceptable naming of and reflections of the indigenous peoples that inhabited the area prior to statehood. And one of the main reasons for updating the hazard mitigation plans is that it's a living document. And so as we meet with various communities within the city and we have discussions about preparedness, ideas happen. And those ideas get funneled to staff, and so we would like to create a document which really is a reflection of what we're hearing from the community. The secondary purpose of keeping an up-to-date hazard mitigation plan is it really shows that the city is serious about preparedness, and there are grants that require a hazard mitigation plan to be in place. And so the more up-to-date our plan is, the more that we can show that, yes, we're taking this seriously. We are doing what we can to prepare before emergencies occur. We're hoping that it reflects well when we apply for these various grants. And so I just wanted to touch on a few. I won't talk about all of these grants that are on the screen that require a hazard mitigation plan, but I do want to touch on a few of the more important ones. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, that is mainly used for future disasters. So that requires a presidential declaration. And so if an emergency happens anywhere in the region, the president declares it as such, then there's grant funding that's released that we can then go after to hopefully accomplish some of these projects that are in our hazard mitigation plan. There's also a public assistant grant program, and that's for post-disaster. So that grant really focuses on rebuilding and doing so quickly. So a lot of those grants require projects that can be done within 6 to 18 months. And so that you're looking for debris management, reconstruction, the rebuilding of structures, those sorts of things. And then one grant that you're probably familiar with, very familiar with, is the Building Resilience, Infrastructure, and Communities Mitigation Grant Program. We call it BRIC for short. That is a grant that focuses on projects that we would like to take care of before a disaster. It includes funding for planning purposes, but also large major construction projects such as the Day Island. We applied for that replacement under this particular grant. And then the next one is the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant, which we've spoken to folks down at Day Island and Sunset Beach about, but there's very specific requirements for that. So again, having an updated hazard mitigation plan is very important to go after these grants. The focus of the projects that were added or changed and updated in some way in Section 5 of the hazard mitigation plan are those that are in front of you. One of the first things that that staff is recommending to update is including hazard modeling and mapping for more and better use of climate change models to determine future impacts of flooding and wildfire urban interface interactions that may be occurring due to climate change. So we currently don't have future-looking maps that show the impacts of flooding. When you go out and you look at websites like NOAA, like the FEMA flood maps, there's another one, Climate Control 50. It looks at climate change impacts on flooding 30 years into the future, 50 years into the future, and Sunset Beach and Day Island and other neighborhoods and communities along the water may be very severely impacted in the future. And so we want to get those maps into this plan moving forward. But we do want to work with our partners, such as the county and the state, make sure we're all using the same types of tools and that we have the same information moving forward. One other item that we would like to put into the hazard mitigation plan is utility protection measures, and this also came up during the meetings that we had with Sunset Beach resident and Day Island residents in the aftermath of the King Tides meetings that were held down there in April. There's some opportunity for hardening or raising or otherwise working with the county to determine how we can better protect some of those utilities moving forward. The other item is the under seismic evaluation. We had the Day Island Bridge under the city critical facilities and structures, but under that section we only had the anticipated action of studying the replacement of the bridge. We're beyond that point now. The city has received funding from the state to begin doing some design work for the replacement of that bridge. And as I had mentioned just a few moments ago, we have actually put in the application for replacement for the bridge, and we will be submitting another application for that same project here moving forward with the Protect grant. So we've just changed the section for the Day Island Bridge to include construction as well. The next item that we wanted to add was protecting roads and thoroughfares. So you heard some of the projects that Jack talked about under the 6-year TIP. I know that Councilmember McCluskey, you had brought up some concern about the South Spit Road, and that's one of the roads that we would like to look at to see, conduct a study to see if there could be changes made to that road to help stabilize it, or how best to protect it during future floods. So language to study that has been added to the hazard mitigation plan. The other item that was added was the structural retrofitting for remodel projects. We currently had that under the seismic portion of the hazard mitigation plan. We added the section to also the flooding section. Again, that came out of the King Tides. There was discussion about the potential for raising homes. The city would still need to go through that entire process, but to add it to the plan would provide for some grant funding should the city move forward in that direction. The Day Island warning system and evacuation route. So some work was done soon after the King Tides. The West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition developed a messaging system for residents at Day Island and Sunset Beach. They, in their own communities, have their own electronic messaging boards, so we've made contacts with those folks down there to push messaging out for emergencies. But we haven't yet done an evacuation route review for those communities, and so we would like to look at that and see if a secondary evacuation route can be done, either a secondary walking path that doesn't include the Day Island Bridge, or a water evacuation route. What would that take? What would that look like? So we would like to get that in the plan to start looking at creating a plan for that, for evacuation routes. The next item that was modified is the floodplain regulation. So there was a line that was in there looking at purchasing properties that experience severe or repetitive loss in the future. And that was it. So we bulked up the language to look at conducting a study for that down the line to see, is there a cost-benefit analysis of potentially doing that sometime in the future. That coupled with the future outlooks for flooding in some of those communities, it might be something that the city may want to look at doing. There is a lot of grant funding out there to conduct those types of studies. There's also grant funding out there to purchase those types of properties that experience that severe or repetitive loss. I think the most recent federal award was in the amount of $25 million, and it went to the Quinault tribe, located right by Ocean Shores over there, to actually relocate 600 residents. And so it's something that a lot of areas are looking at, coastal regions are looking at, something that first started down more in the south, sort of the Gulf states, but with the expectation of climate change and flood risks, it is folks in Washington State are looking at potentially moving or purchasing property. And then finally, of course, public education is always very important. We learned that after the King Tides, there were some property owners that did have the National Flood, or were participating in the National Flood Insurance Program, but there still are residents that don't have that insurance, which is very important. And for some of those grants, like the FEMA flood grant, you do have to have that insurance in place before you can receive federal funding to repair your home, remodel your home, raise your home, And so we do want to make a push for residents that are living in those flood-prone areas to really get educated on the National Flood Insurance Program. We managed to have a representative from FEMA, who was a specialist in that program, come to the Day Island community meeting and speak specifically to that. But we would like to remind folks of that again when we go back down there this fall. And we'd like to provide more education just to the community overall, because Day Island and Sunset Beach aren't the only areas that experience flooding in the city. So we would like to make sure that people are educated about the necessity of having that insurance now while they can still get it. You may have heard that there are some insurance companies that are no longer providing certain insurances to homeowners. California is a great example with the wildfires occurring. There are some new homeowners that just cannot get that insurance. So it's important for people to know about those things. So those are the projects that we thought we could add now, that we heard from residents that folks were interested in. And so that's what's being provided for in this update. Wanted to talk a little bit about next steps and what that would look like. So again, we would if council approves these updates, barring any questions that you may have or any changes that we might make, hopefully council with those updates would approve sections 2 and 5. We would then send that over to the county, and they would update the plan there. Again, I just want to touch on the importance of updating the hazard mitigation plan for grant purposes. It's always good when we can say to the feds, we take this very seriously. We had meetings, we made changes. We're very serious about making some of these changes in the future to protect the community. And then the city, of course, will continue to work as a partner with the county and the state on updating the hazard mitigation plan. It's going to start very soon, so I wanted to show you that timeline as well. So the next plan will cover the years 2025 through 2030. This is a very loose timeline. The county will be providing a more exact timeline in the next couple of weeks, but the update's going to begin very soon. The first quarter of 2024 is when we'll start talking about updating the plan in its entirety. So we work very closely with the county. We attend multiple meetings with them to walk through each of the sections. We estimate that we might have the finalized draft plan in place for public outreach to provide comments on the second or third quarter of 2024. Again, gaining public comments and public responses to the plan is a major portion of the hazard mitigation update. We expect public comment to be concluded around the fourth quarter of 2024. Obviously, we would come back and have the city council members review the draft plan in its entirety and make any suggested changes that you may see fit at the time. It then has to go to the state for their review. And once they sign off, then it comes back to the city council for your final adoption and then goes to the county for its final adoption. So that's a very preliminary timeline of the next steps for the entirety of the plan update. Just a reminder of who our partners are. Again, we work very closely with the county. We get a lot of guidance from the state when updating the hazard mitigation plan, and we do touch base with FEMA as well. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Belisi, did you have a question to start with?
Yes. Thank you for your presentation, Lisa. It's always interesting to see what the steps one has to go to and all the things one has to think of on these particular plans. Now, just because it's in the plan doesn't mean that this is gospel. There are still administrative things and building regulations, et cetera, comp plan adjustments, et cetera, that may have to play into this to make it go into effect, such as retrofitting buildings, particularly in Day Island, where they have a height limit on that. That would have to go through a planning commission process and review and be codified before homeowners in Day Island could just automatically raise their property just because it's stated in the hazard mitigation plan,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so this is just the beginning of a longer process, but this gets us to the first step, which is any potential grants for reviews and corrections, et cetera?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. First, you answered one of my questions about if there's grant money available for purchasing property. Thank you for answering that. You mentioned the public assistant grant. Refresh my memory, that's only available for public infrastructure, correct?
Yes, and let me go back to my notes because I do have some notes on that. Public infrastructure, debris removal, and yes, that is correct. It has to be done for the projects have to be concluded within a very specific time frame, and they have to be presidentially declared. So streets, roads, public buildings, utilities.
Got it. And and just as a technicality, if it has, I know it wants to be done quickly, are you allowed to do improvements in the infrastructure, like building it to new code, or do you just have to kind of restore what was there?
That's a good question, and let me get back to you on that. I want to make
Okay.
sure that I provide the correct information there.
Okay, and then one final quick question. I don't know if it's already part of the hazard mitigation plan, but you're talking about undergrounding utilities, specifically around Day Island. Is there any grant money available for undergrounding utilities elsewhere for ice storms, wind storms, all the trees that fall and cut power? Is there grant money available for that somewhere?
There are grant fundings available for undergrounding utilities in various areas, and I know that in some neighborhoods they've started to do that. But it is more difficult to get, but the opportunity is there.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that part of our hazard mitigation plan at all, talking about windstorm, ice storm, and just those trees?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, good. Councilmember Belisi, or I'm sorry, Councilmember McCluskey.
We look
I'm the
alike.
other one.
On this side.
The other Belisi.
I'll have a neon tag next time.
Yeah, it's
Right, thank you, Mayor. I also was going to ask about the ice storm because we had that significant event that created a lot of distress for our citizens, wires coming down and everything. So, that's, since it's happened once, it probably will happen again.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is fire, especially with some of our ADUs that are coming in, and also along the Day Island and Sunset, where roofs are touching, and looking at, I guess you can't really be totally proactive, but you can do an educational piece, and also how we're going to react to that when that happens. You could probably dovetail along with some of the ways that we mitigate our emergency planning with the flood situation. Hopefully we still have the roadway and there's no water to deal with, except for what the fire department provides. But anyway, I think that should be included in that as well. And then partnering with, as you and Jennifer have done an amazing job, along with the FEMA representative, of coming out to the neighborhood and giving them great ideas on how to prepare for a whatever emergency situation that happens that captures them in-house and they can't escape. And some of the special situations along where you have someone in a wheelchair or someone that's elderly, and so you're very in tune to that, and also the sewer issue with the pump.
Yes.
Right.
It's on our list.
Right, because that's important too.
Very much so, yes.
We want everything to flush in a timely manner. And the looking at possibilities of, I know FEMA looks long-term, but short-term on some of their, and maybe looking at some exemptions just to maintain a few years down the road so that people are safe, and then looking at long-term. So, for example, if a home, they want a home to go up 9 feet, well, that's, in some cases, it's kind of structurally unreasonable. Is to maybe, if you can do an elevation of 3 or 4 feet within reason, and maybe that will, because I know there's certain homes that are already at our height restriction, but they seem to have fared okay. You know, they were able to have that whole top floor there, but others that were not, they were single level residents that, you know, when it floods, they have nowhere else to go. They can't. They don't have an access up to get out of the water. You know, so to elevate them just a little bit more. There are some ways where you don't have to elevate the structure, but you can elevate the interior of the floor, and to do other barriers coming in to mitigate that piece to it. So, yeah, I know FEMA is probably a tough one to get exemptions for, but you know, maybe to kick the can down the road a little bit until you know, we can get the bigger resolution, whether we want to buy out the homes or do whatever to help protect the property there as well. And so kudos to all the wonderful work you have done. I heard great comments from at least the Day Islanders and also some of the Sunset Beach residents about how professional and thoughtful and detailed your presentations were with your troop that came down there and did that. And also they were impressed with the city representatives that showed up. And so that gave them hope and inspiration. So thank you for all your efforts and, you know, the staff that works with you as well. Yeah, thank you.
All right, and then I had a couple of questions too. First off, with regards to flood insurance. So I worked in another community, had some flooding issues. But I was ignorant of the fact that there's other insurance companies that you can buy flood insurance from. That was news to me until I was in the Day Island briefing. So there's there's continually new things to learn, and that was great. But getting that information out is, I think, helpful, and I'm glad we have an education program to support that as one of our efforts here. Now, this, as we're working through this update, we're doing this in conjunction with Pierce County. Then we also have our, I'm going to refer to it as District 10 Coalition, or what's the proper name for that?
West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition.
All right. And they also help us in our emergency planning functions as well. And I'm trying in my mind to bring a bright line between what falls on which side of the ledger between Pierce County and the West Pierce Emergency Planning Coalition.
So the county covers such a large area, the West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition. We're able to focus on the concerns that mainly coincide within University Place, our neighbors, Lakewood and Steilacoom. So we have various concerns that, let's say, Fife, Puyallup, and Ording don't have. And so we wanted the ability to, for example, in the hazard mitigation plan, get together, talk about the things that specifically affect us as regions that, you know, go along the Puget Sound area, and be more of an advocate for us in the larger setting of the county. I mean, the county is a great partner, but we really want to focus on our residents and make sure that we're doing what we can to protect the folks here and businesses here.
So should I think about the West Pierce Emergency Management Coalition as primarily as an advocacy group, and the county, at least in this role, as Department of Emergency Management doing planning for us? Is that?
They will assist in planning for us, and I should say they're more than just an advocacy group, right? We plan trainings for our own staff to work together. We provide education to the community. We provide outreach to the community. We can provide potentially quicker messaging than if we were to work through the county to get out important information, evacuation information, those sorts of things.
Yeah, so who gets to say there's an evacuation is sometimes an interesting question. My guess is Pierce County needs to be in that loop closely.
Yes, and they are. And an example of that would be the King Tide. So we had multiple meetings with the county during those events. We met to provide similar messaging. And we let them know, this is the messaging that we're going to put out, this is when, and please match our messaging.
All right, well, good. Well, thank you, Lisa. You've given me the details I was hoping for, and that's helpful. The plan looks good from my perspective, and I think we're ready, from my side of it, to consider it. I don't know, does council want to touch this another time, or are we ready to move on? Oh, is that your question? Then are we ready for that question?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I think we're ready for moving this to our regular agenda items. Okay. Is there anything else? Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, then we get to move on to ADU reports with the help of Kenneth George. So, and
Thank you very much, council members. Good evening, Mayor Worthington, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, and council members. You know me, but for the record, Kenneth George, Senior Planner for the Community and Economic Development Department. Tonight, I'm here to bring again the Housing Action Toolkit Code amendments related to accessory dwelling units. This was brought before you in a study session, first study session back in June, and we're back again to narrow some of the focus down. The objective this evening is to respond to some council questions and some comments from the previous meeting, previous study session, and to go over the code amendments that were recommended by the Planning Commission in the 2022 work plan study that the Planning Commission did last year. So just quick introduction. Again, I wanted to mention, because I know that we touched on the House bill that was adopted by this legislative session, and kind of wanted to reiterate why this is coming before you again. This was first introduced, these ADU amendments were first introduced in the city's Housing Action Toolkit, which was adopted in June of 2021. Following that year, the Planning Commission's work plan for 2022 included looking at implementing the toolkit, and one of those items was the ADU code amendments that were recommended in the toolkit. So all of this work started before the legislative session and anything that was adopted. So continued on, the Planning Commission met 5 times over the 2022 work plan, and had a public hearing on those code amendments and formally recommended some adoption of some of the code amendments. So tonight, like I said, we're going to go over some of the, I'll go into the next slide here. We're going to, organization of this slide here, I just wanted to take some time to, a couple of slides, 2 slides to be exact, to go over some of the questions and comments that we heard from the June study session, and go over just a couple of corrections and a few comments on the legislative changes, and then just a final slide would be to present the ADU regulation comparison of what we currently have, what the Planning Commission recommended, and what the 1337 is going to mandate in 2025. The first, to respond to some of the council questions, I wanted to mention that as we've continued to review and research ADU permit history, we did refine the graph here. So I have that up again. It's not the exact graph that we showed in June, but it's very similar. There ended up being a drop in ADUs in 2019, so we've dug into the permit history a bit more. I wanted to just point that out, but the overall permit average is still about 2 to 3 permits every year, but some of those numbers changed. One of the things that we heard was whether or not there were any complaints on ADUs that the city has received. So we looked to our code enforcement officer to go into her complaint history logs and pull up any records of anyone filing a code enforcement complaint against an ADU, whether that's for noise or parking or for unkept yards or anything of that nature. Not any that were unpermitted or things like that. That'd be a building code violation. But for any of those, and they looked into it and found didn't find any complaints on ADUs from their history. We also heard just how much would it cost to implement a pre-approved ADU program. So there's a couple of jurisdictions that are out there. Lacey is one of them. Renton's another one. And I think Port Townsend has an RFP out there to begin a program for themselves. So looking at some of the jurisdictions that already have implemented the program and some of them that are looking at adopting a program came up with ballpark of about $30,000 to $60,000 to implement the program, something around that range. We also looked into just the kind of question about Airbnbs and other short-term, less than 30-day kind of rentals. This wasn't necessarily a direct response to how many we have, but it was kind of a little bit of a clip on removing that owner occupancy requirement. So in a little bit in response to looking at some of the history or looking at some of these websites, Airbnb, VRBO, and a few others, there's about 35 rentals that I found that were listed, so it wasn't wasn't too difficult to look those up. And or it wasn't also with 35, it wasn't too difficult to click on each one of those and figure out what exactly were those listings. And majority of them were the entire house being rented on vacation, short-term rental sites. And only about 5 that I could tell were clearly ADUs with a detached or a guest kind of cottage listing with a kitchen in there. About 5 of them were listed and advertised as room rentals, so that was also easy to kind of snuff out which ones were just the room rentals as well. We'll dedicate one slide to kind of responding to a little bit of a GIS exercise on ADU potential going forward in what we have. So this was a little bit of a difficult task, but looking at how many properties left in the city that can kind of in the R1 zone and R2 zone that could hold an ADU. Now the thing to point out is that an ADU, whether it's attached or detached, is allowed in conjunction with a single-family residence on any R1 and R2 zoned lot. So, but it's not necessarily every single one, because there are quite a bit of there are some other constraints to factor in. So one of the things is House Bill 1337 does allow the city to restrict ADUs on property that's encumbered by critical areas. So we have on the map in orange steep slopes. These are some of the GIS data that we have. As well in the lighter blue, there's some wetlands. And we do have pulling a little bit of information on unsewered areas that would also account for areas constrained that we don't necessarily aren't required by 1337 to allow an ADU on. So those are identified in the darker gray. And everything else in the teal and the sort of lighter purple-ish, fuchsia color, pinkish color. The one that I chose to be the most contrasting color I could find for a map of this size shows those. So I separated out those two rather than just keeping all one color. Because going back, we'll see in the next slide that 1337 does allow us to require parking on one parking spot for lots that are 6,000 square feet or less. So that you can see that that's represented in pink. Currently, those are all the lots that are 6,000 square feet or less. Everything in that tealish color would be the lots that are greater than 6,000 square feet, in which case 1337 does allow us to require up to 2 parking spaces for lots per unit for lots that are greater than 6,000 square feet. So I thought it would be helpful to break out that difference. Everything else that's not colored would be regional growth center designation, mixed use designation, multifamily, and other places that are parks and schools and things like that, or possibly even vacant lots. But to finish up with this slide, that ended up being, there's roughly going from a comprehensive plan, current comprehensive plan, which identifies roughly 9,000 9,000 lots in the R1 and R2 zone, removing the lots that had steep slopes and wetlands on the unsewered areas. That ended up being about 65 to maybe 70% of the R1 and R2 lots. And that does not, it is important to know that that does not include, that we just don't have the HOA information for lots, so that doesn't include, but we do know that most of the southern part of the city, those big parts of the southern part of the city that are governed by HOAs, a lot of stuff to the north not necessarily. Would this be a good time if you have anything to add, or I wouldn't mind pausing here to respond to any questions or comments.
All right, well, thank you. So you're saying, in general, this is a round number, 60% of 9,000 lots would be a quick estimate of how many lots might be available for ADUs. That's about 5,400 lots. So, and all. Thank you. So I know Councilmember Belisi, as opposed to Councilmember McCluskey.
Are you sure?
Councilmember Belisi has a question, and I imagine others do too. But before we get there, let me just say that I found your map very helpful, and yeah, thank you for putting that together. It helped us kind of limit the universe to what the impacts could be, and that's what we're looking for. And I know that we had to make a few assumptions to get there, but for the scale of decision we have, this is, for me, a good tool. Councilmember Belisi.
Thank you so much for responding to the questions we asked at our last study session. As far as the number of permits, I mean, the limitation was based on owner occupancy requirement. So I don't think that's a true indication of what we potentially have to look forward to with the owner occupancy requirement being lifted. I think we can see that coming up. But is there a way that we can regulate that ADUs are not eligible for short-term rental? I mean, the whole purpose of this regulation was to make affordable housing available to people, not to rent it out on a short-term basis and generate income. So because the regulations for building an ADU are a lot less limiting than, subdividing existing property, the 60% property in there, I would like to see it make it less friendly towards somebody who's looking to have vacation home rental income. And I think the ADU, while I don't like the regulation the way it exists, and you can see that 60% of our property in the north end of our community could very well see an explosion of growth. In worst case scenario, I don't think I'm not saying that tomorrow the permitting office is going to be inundated, but it has the greatest potential. I'd like to see some regulation in addition to the off-street parking requirement that we place in there, that it can't be used for short-term rental. Understanding that it is on a complaint basis. I'm not expecting staff to monitor it, but put that guard in there, just like we had the owner occupancy requirement to get an ADU permit, have the similar stop for the ADU building. Because again, it's supposed to be affordable housing, and affordable housing is meant to be longer than a 30-day period. It's meant to be, if a homeowner or property owner wants to have rental income on there, fine, make it affordable and make it a long-term strategy, not Airbnb, come check it out for 2 weeks sort of thing. And then, like I said, the street parking, I think, definitely needs to be one of those requirements, and if the project can't meet it, then it can't be built. But if we don't do it, if we don't do something as these properties start developing with ADUs in it, the least complex way to increase density, the number of complaints that we will receive will increase exponentially, because there will be issues with parking, there'll be issues with the Airbnb rentals and the party crowd, et cetera. So I'd like to see if we can't spearhead that moving forward. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm good right now.
So first, I really appreciate this map, thank you. This is what I was asking about, and I understand there's assumptions involved in this and there's limitations to what we can do with it, but it really does help kind of draw the picture. Having said that, if I could talk to you guys offline about the map, because I am red-green colorblind, and I'm missing some of the colors you got on here, so. I'll have to take a
Just
close look.
basically the whole map.
I know. So, going to have to work on that one. But thank you for doing that. What I would actually like, and maybe this would be for my fellow council members, if we could do a resolution or something to task the Planning Commission to look at what code changes we'd want to look at as far as parking or anything else. I think that'd be appropriate for possibly the Planning Commission to look at and come back to us with recommendations.
So we have some steps that we can,
Right.
along those lines, that would ultimately, result in a resolution. If we can, decide that's the question we'd like to send to them.
Yeah.
And all there sounds like there's some interest in that. We haven't actually heard from staff on the parking issue yet, but we're going to. So, at least according to the report. So, anyway.
Right. Okay. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Good. And so you had another portion of the report you wanted to get to?
I got two more slides, so I can carry on. Okay. This will be a quick one. This was a similar slide to the last study session, with just a couple of corrections here. Director Brisky and I when we first was brought up, we mentioned only that traffic impact fees were charged for an ADU, and we forgot that parking impact fees were also a part of that, and so we didn't have that included in the last slide. We wanted to own up to that and mention that there is a parking impact fee that we currently charge, and again, House Bill 1337 limits us to 50%, so we're roughly about 37% of the principal unit charge, and so that would, after implementing 1337, that would get reduced there. Nothing changed on the traffic impact fee. And then again, just highlighting, took everything else, but then highlighting on this slide that we can regulate for parking, because I know that did sound like that was going to be something to look at. So we can't require parking, off-street parking for an ADU within a half mile of a major transit stop, but we can require one off-street parking space per ADU on lots smaller than 6,000 square feet, and 2 off-street parking spaces per ADU on lots greater than 6,000 square feet. And the last slide is the big one here. The one I'll just, I think I have an ending and a question and response slide, but we'll forget that slide and just keep this one up here. This is what we currently have for regulation changes that are just the development regulations themselves. Those are those changes. Current regulations are listed in the first column, Planning Commission recommendations in the middle column, and the legislative changes of House Bill 1337 in the final column.
Kenneth, could you define not two of the same? What is that? Tell me that in a different way.
What was that again?
So it says under attached or detached, but not two of the same.
Oh, yeah. So the Planning Commission, they did decide to go recommend that there would be, to allow 2 ADUs on one lot in conjunction with a single family, but only one would be detached and only one would be attached. So if somebody has somebody couldn't have 2 attached. That's where the Planning Commission's recommendation limited. If somebody had an attached ADU and they wanted to put another attached ADU, let's say they had a basement or an attic ADU already and they wanted to add on some square footage and add on another ADU, so that's still attached. The maximum square footage is 800 square feet, but the Planning Commission wanted to limit that and say no on that. that they could, if they had an existing attached ADU, then they could come in for a detached, smaller 600 square foot ADU, or vice versa. If they already had the detached, they couldn't get a second detached, is where the planning commission wanted to limit it.
So in that scenario, I'm sorry, but just I'm not visualizing this properly. So in that scenario where they have one detached now, but they could build unattached, that would have to be attached to the current ADU?
Be attached to the principal residence.
Principal residence?
Not, not attached to the
And then one unattached to the principal residence. So the attachment is actually the principal residence, so.
Yes, to the principal residence.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, like I said, I've numbered the development regulations for ease of capturing it on this slide. It's limited to the number of ADUs. I said one concurrently for the Planning Commission's recommendation, and also the 1337 is for 2. And then the type of ADU, as you mentioned, the size, the maximum size, the maximum height, that occupancy requirement. The entrance restrictions as well that we currently have, and what the Planning Commission recommended, and then what the legislation requires. Again, on parking, and then the covered structure, just to point that one out, that's a staff pick. That's not anything that was in the toolkit. That's not anything in legislative changes. That was one that is a limitation that we've found in permitting these. That we'd like to see a bit of a change on, that to help some folks out and having a little bit of uncovered or some covered structures with those detached ADUs. And like I said, this is my last slide. This is where I wanted to end on. We're both here for questions, and hoping with this discussion to get a little bit of direction on where we'd like to go with these. But with that, I'll end it. And
okay. Well, great. We'll get some more questions going in just a second. I'm going to start, though, just briefly on House Bill 1337. I know we have to adopt certain things. We've a variety of different items. But roughly, when would we anticipate 1337 actually being enforced as a mandate?
It would be in 2025. I think it's June 25.
Roughly
25.
2 years from now. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 months after our yeah.
But let me think of it as just 2 years from now.
It's
That's just to
now.
simplify it in my own mind. So Councilmember Wood, and then Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
I have nothing
Oh,
else.
you're good. I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. So this is a question for Matt. So I understand about the 2, and I'm glad you asked that, because about the 2 years and what is actually going to be mandatory. However, the legislation did pass, and the intent is for us to prepare the cities, not so much us, but the cities, jurisdictions, to get ready and figure out how they're going to enact it. So I'm not sure mandatory is how relative that is. However, what liability do we have if we go with 800 and then we go to detached 21 in the height, and so on, when the legislation says 1,000 square feet, et cetera, detached 24-foot height, and we enact that now because we can, and we're not required technically, but what is the liability if somebody builds the 800 and then later on says, the legislation was there, I mean, yes, you had to 2025 to tell us to do it, but you were somewhat already told. So what's the liability?
So I'm not too sure. If I understand your question correctly, I'm not too terribly concerned on the liability portion, because council's got a couple of different choices. One, it could do nothing and wait until mid-2025, in which case somebody could build something that comports with the requirements of 1337. And it's out there. Folks know it's out there. If we change the code now to something less than that standard, it doesn't change.
Correct.
They could apply for a permit under the standards that council would adopt, which would be less than 1337 standards, or they could still wait, run out the clock until 1337 becomes legally effective, and then we're required to do something.
Well, I understand. Thank you.
So, Councilmember McCluskey.
Okay, thank you. Well, why wouldn't we just go to the 1337 standard now instead of waiting for a couple years? Is this the minimum height of 1,000, or is it the maximum? Is there a range?
excuse me, is for square footage?
For square footage, I'm sorry, yes.
There's not a range. There's, 1337 is allowed up to 1,000 square feet.
So up to, so you can
someone
do
could-
an ADU smaller.
Correct. Someone has the
Okay.
option to build something smaller, but they can't go over 1,000 square
Okay,
feet.
all right. So why wouldn't we just go to the ones we're going to be mandated in 2025 right now? Why have a two-step process? Is there a
That's our
concern?
options.
Yeah, it's an
That-
option,
that
I
is it. That
understand,
is it.
yeah.
Correct, that is an option.
Okay,
So-
all right.
Mayor.
If we're mandated by the state, I think that's where we need to be. And look at how to mitigate it, you know, from that perspective on. That's my comment on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Wood.
Just to add on to Councilmember McCluskey's comments, there is, I mean, obviously it makes sense at some point in the near future if we're going to make a change to go to what the state requires. I just think we need, before we say yes to 1,000 square feet, we make a determination on if we want to do parking requirements or other requirements. And so I think those should all be enacted together, so people aren't slapping up a 1,000-foot thing with no parking. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. I think just to go back to some of our earlier discussions about the legislative option that we have versus what we may be able to improve from what we have, was that some of these heights and square footages were somewhat bigger than, I mean, there was a lot of advocacy from jurisdictions and council members not to go that big and that height. And so since we have the option to prevent that from happening for at least for the next 2 years, plus or minus, we can at least, for those that want to build before we're made to go to that degree, we can at least cap it at a height that we feel better about until we're made, and then those that then can build to that. But I think that we had a discussion that we really didn't want to do that sooner than later. That's where that came from. That's the reason why.
And then, so from my perspective, in terms of comments, I think a lot of that discussion was driven, in my view, one, it wasn't unanimous in that discussion. I know because I didn't agree. And two, I think some of that discussion was because we were reluctant to let the state tell us what to do. And that was kind of our response. And often it is, and we should look and figure out what we want to do. When I look at this, though, what we had in place, or what we had in the process of being in place, coming through the Planning Commission after being submitted in our 2-year-ago plan for our housing cost toolkit issue, all of this is the outcome of that. Now this does push up heights a little bit, not as much actually as the Planning Commission has recommended, and it increases the square footage by 200 square feet. 200 square feet is not that much difference. It is, yeah, it's a bedroom. It's a office. It's a small room, but yeah. But it is still pretty darn close. Now, we can go and use the standard our Planning Commission has suggested, or something else, as we take it through our process. We will, in 2 years, probably want to come back or sooner, to adjust this so we're matching what the state standard is. And we will have spent both our staff's time and our citizens' money to do the process twice in 24 months. And so that's just sort of, do I need to do that? And what do I buy? And I buy 200 square feet is what that difference is. And I'm not sure I see enough value in the 200 square feet for the staff cost and the process time and money cost associated with it. So, but that's where I'm at for the moment. Yeah.
I think that if we do go in that route, I do agree with Councilmember Wood that we should have parking requirements. So if we move in that direction, we need to talk about what that is and probably just implement what the state said and just go from there, just to make it easy.
Very good point. Other comments, Councilmember Lisi?
Well, the difference between 800 and 1,000 square feet is going from a two-bedroom to a three-bedroom. So you are increasing the number of people potentially living on site, because three-bedroom apartments are 1,000 square feet right now. So you've got increased traffic. The Planning Commission recommendation for no off-street parking was based on 800 square feet, which is a small two-bedroom sort of unit. I think if we're going to send it back to have them look at the adding parking regulations, they can at the same time look at the impact that 1,000 square feet has for that. Because it's going, there's been a suggestion that it go back, but this has the repercussions more so than subdividing land to really increase density in our affordable neighborhoods. Mr. Kaiser, my earlier comment about prohibiting short-term rentals of ADUs, is that something that we could potentially have our planning commission look at?
I think
realizing that we're not going to sit there and be the Airbnb police.
Yeah, up until you said that last statement, I think it's probably appropriate to have the Planning Commission to take a look at the short-term rentals. Having said that, when my initial reaction to that statement, however, is that you may want to have two different pieces of legislation travel, one being the zoning changes attributable to 1337 / the Planning Commission recommendation. The second would be ostensibly under a business licensing regime for short-term rentals. And it wouldn't just necessarily be the ADUs, it might be a little bit bigger. But that's my initial reaction to that question. And that is a longer-term project.
Well, as I stated earlier, I mean, I go on Airbnb myself, and I know ADUs are like the prime thing to be out there for rentals. And with the state wanting affordable housing, I mean, that's what it was done for. By opening up and allowing a short-term rental to occur in an ADU, you are violating the intent of that legislation, which is affordable housing and more housing. And so I'm not so worried about full houses because, there's a huge mortgage on that house and we have very few of them. We're not. But I agree, looking at short-term rentals overall in the community are needed. But in this particular case, my issue is with the fact that this is supposed to be affordable housing for needed citizens. And if we don't put a kibosh on it, it becomes very desirable.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think you're right, Matt, and that is that it is two legislations. It's two separate things. So I think that for the rental part, it should go back to the first of all, would it be technically legal for us to be able to do that? And if it's yes, then our process is send it back.
The short-term rental, I mean, if you take a look at some of our neighboring jurisdictions, the town of Steilacoom and the city of Gig Harbor, I understand through media accounts has recently stepped into that foray. It was an extended process. I can't pull those up immediately, but it was a long process, is at least my understanding, from those jurisdictions.
Well, I guess that's the homework that has to be done, because my point, guys, is that if it's illegal for any reason, why send it to the Planning Commission then for them to be told, well, this is... So let's determine the legality, because if that restricts us from moving it forward, let's just face it. If it doesn't, then we have the commissioners go and look at it and give us the best thing, and we'll rule on that. I think that would be the fair thing. On the other one, I don't believe that we have to go back to the commission after all this work for the parking. I think, if I understand this right, the parking is already set and capped at 1 for a particular ADU and 2 for a particular ADU. We can't do more than that, correct? Okay, so that's already capped. So if we go to this state level of height and square footage, we already have the parking requirements set if we want to, and we do want to. I think that's what I'm hearing. And so that would be just the direction we give you to make the correction as we move forward. That's what I'm hearing. So I don't see that part going to the commission. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, yes. All right. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that sounds like a good summary. We have a few minutes left in the meeting. The question about ADU often is how different jurisdictions deal with ADUs, licensing them and the rest, ends up being, some jurisdictions pretty contentious. Because there's a couple of sides to that argument. And we haven't here, we're not accustomed to hotels in our city. We have 35 or so Airbnb type opportunities. It's not a large segment of our business. It may be someday. And I guess if we want to set standards, it's easier to do that with 35 in place than it is with 100. So we can have that discussion. I'm just saying it could keep folks a little busy, and maybe even the Economic Development Board would like to have a voice in that one too. Sir, Commission, I said, yeah, Commission. So be it. We can go down that road. So at this time, are we ready in terms of the first question, being the ADU, including the existing parking requirements? And just to be clear, could either of our staff folks what is currently the requirement that would apply for an ADU in different settings for parking?
Currently, we do not require parking for accessory dwelling units.
We don't, okay.
We require it for primary structure, 2 stalls. When
the Planning Commission is recommending no changes, they're really saying no need for additional parking in their view.
Correct, and they were basing that on what we existing require, and then, the changes they recommended at the 800 square feet.
Right, okay, so that would be returning it, so if we want parking standards, it goes back. If we want to have required parking associated with ADU use, we need to bring that through the commission then. We don't.
We can propose the language if the council wants to go that direction for your consideration to add in parking if you choose that.
Just without taking it back to the commission, just say, Commission, we like what you said, but on this one issue, we want to add parking, and do it that way.
And in 1337 doesn't require the parking. It gives the local jurisdiction the ability to require up to one stall per on an ADU for a 6,000 square foot lot, and 2 parking stalls for an ADU on lots greater than 6,000 square feet. So, and that would be probably exactly how we could write it in the.
But getting back to Planning Commission recommendation did not include any ADU required parking.
No.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Councilmember Belisi.
Well, the Planning Commission was based on current history of ADUs, not what 1354 was bringing. I think a simple add of this language would not require it to go back to Planning Commission. We would be then in line with the state requirement and at least covering our basis, so to speak, in the impact of the neighborhoods.
Councilmember Belisi, I agree. So,
yeah.
That's fine. We can move forward with some proposed language and take that through the council approval process. And it sounds like or consideration process. It sounds like we're ready to do that. So,
and that would be a proposed language at the 1337 at the state requirement.
That would be my suggestion at this point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Want a motion?
To
adjourn?
Oh, no. I think we're going to do that by consensus here in about 30 seconds. And it would have been 30 seconds sooner if you hadn't asked.
We're late because of him.
All right. Well, with that, I think we've completed our work for the evening, and we're ready to adjourn. So, without objection, we're adjourned.
Yay. Good night.